This is episode 117 of the Trauma Coaching for Latter-day Saints podcast, Why You Might Feel Shame for Simply Existing. I'm your host, Danita Bremer. I'm a Latter-day Saint mom with a history of trauma. I've figured out how to heal my trauma and can help you do the same. Why? Because trauma is one obstacle to gathering Zion. Let's talk about what it takes to truly heal and find lasting joy. Okay, everyone, today has been a day. My kids do not have school, and somehow I did not wake up at my alarm. It's the first time in months that has happened. I'm doing really great with my goal of waking up earlier. I'm working toward getting up by 6 a.m. and I've been making tons of progress. I have an accountability partner, and this morning I had to say, "Oh, I owe you $10," because that's the consequence that I have set for myself if I don't send a picture of myself dressed by the target time. So it's the first time that's happened. And then it just kind of threw my whole day off. And so it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon and I haven't even taken a shower yet. So just helping you feel good about yourself today. I wanted to continue from last week. We talked about attunement and how love is not enough. We need attunement, and it is a core need. And that just made me think of the other core needs that I've been learning about. So I want to back up and talk about connection, which is our very first core need, even before attunement. And before I really start talking about connection and what happens when we don't receive connection in the way that we need it, I want to define what a core need is. So when I talk about a core need, because needs and wants and desires, all of these words get thrown around, and I think it's super useful to actually identify what are we talking about specifically here. When I'm talking about a core need, I am specifically referring to a need as in life or death. So I'm really thinking about the needs we have from infancy that keep us from failing to thrive or dying. As infants, we are totally and completely dependent on our caregivers. If they don't meet our core needs, we would literally die. So that's what I mean by a core need. So connection, like I said, is actually our very first core need. And these core needs, there's 5 of them. So connection is the very first one. Attunement, we talked about last week. And then there's 3 more, and I'll create a podcast episode for each of them. They do kind of come developmentally. So there is a bit of a timeline. So we need connection from the moment we're born, probably from before we're born. And of course, they overlap. It's not like it's one and then the next and then the next, but they do somewhat coincide with our development. So connection is the first core need. If we don't receive connection, specifically from our mothers, we literally could die. At the very least, we just do not thrive. We don't gain weight. We just are like a vegetable almost, even though our brain is fully intact. There have been studies done about this, and I'm thinking particularly of one about baby monkeys. And I'm going to drop the link in the show notes. But in this study, the baby monkeys were removed from their mothers a few hours after they were born, and they were given 2 surrogate mothers. One was a mama monkey made from terry cloth, and this mama monkey gave no food, but was soft and cuddly, right? And then the second surrogate mother was made of wire and had a bottle that the baby monkeys could feed from. And the evidence from this study showed that the baby monkeys would go to the wire monkey for food, but they spent significantly more time with the terry cloth mama. And the babies would become very agitated if the terry cloth mama was ever removed. So this points to our need for like physical contact, physical connection, and other things as well that are discussed in the article that I will drop the link to in the show notes. There's also a story from the book, The Boy Who Was Raised as a dog. The authors are Bruce Perry and Maya Solovitz. Hope I'm saying that right. It's a book about developmental trauma. It's a book about what happens when young children, infants, toddlers on up, do not receive the care and attention that they need to thrive. So they don't receive, their core needs are not being met. And he goes through several case studies. One of them is about a boy who was literally put in a dog kennel, super sad. But another story in this book, which was one of the most impactful ones for me to hear, was about a 4-year-old girl named Laura who was brought into the hospital by her mother because she was so incredibly tiny. She weighed only 26 pounds at 4 years old, despite having been on a feeding tube for weeks. Like she was in the hospital for weeks. The doctors could not figure out what was wrong with her, why she wasn't gaining weight. Lots of different professionals were brought in. And eventually, Dr. Perry, the author of this book, was brought in as a consult. And through his process, he eventually realized that Laura's problem wasn't physiological, but emotional. Her mother, Virginia, didn't actually know how to connect emotionally to Laura. The mother, was a product of the foster care system and never officially got adopted. And so she never had anybody to model to her what to do when you become a mother. So she was a diligent mother. She fed her baby, she changed diapers, but she didn't really touch or hold her baby. They didn't have a physical connection, much of a physical connection, and therefore they didn't have much of an emotional connection. And Dr. Perry realized this and course corrected. And once he was able to get Laura, the daughter, the connection that she needed, she started to gain weight and thrive and learn how to, be more developmentally her age in the world. So these two examples highlight the need for all mammals, not just humans, but especially humans, to have connection. So what happens when our core need for connection is not met? We experience shame, particularly 3 types of shame: shame for existing, shame for feeling, and shame for connecting. So let's talk about what this could look like in real life. And I just wanted to pause here and remind you that I'm not a therapist, I'm not a psychologist. These examples are based off of what I have been learning about attachment and your nervous system and my own life and the people that I have kind of inside information to. Mostly this is my family, but occasionally it has caused me to reflect on certain clients. But even with my clients, we meet together 1 hour a week. I don't have an exhaustive amount of information about them, right? So let's start with shame over existing. I personally am intimately familiar with this kind of shame. My mother was only 17 years old, 17 and just over a month when I was born. She had at least 1 abortion before I was born, so she was young. And growing up, my parents always talked about how young they were. And so it was very common. It wasn't like a secretive thing at all. The abortion I didn't find out about that till I was a little bit older, but it was just kind of out in the open, this thought that my birth, me coming into the world, was not actually wanted. And no one really told me that. In fact, I was told the opposite. I was told that they loved me so much and they're so happy that they had me. But humans are smart and I am smart. And I kind of learned to read through the lines, right? Having a baby that young and not planned is a recipe for lots of discomfort. And although I was never told specifically, I just assumed that I was a burden, that I wasn't truly wanted, and therefore I felt a baseline of shame for simply existing. I remember the moment when I was on a coaching call, getting coached by my coach, and she kept asking me questions. And I finally said, I just feel ashamed that I even exist. So that's like some pretty heavy, tough stuff, right? So if you feel that way, I just want you to know that I understand. I am totally with you. And I just wanted to talk about a few things that came up for me as to what it could look like if you're not like super in tune with your own internal world. If you haven't spent a lot of time like I have doing self-development work, you might not be completely aware that you feel shame over simply existing, or it might just look different. And here are a few things that came up as I just pondered this about how could this look in everyday life. And the first thing that came up was that we make ourselves small or quiet. This is like the first 30 years of my life. I always tried to be the quiet one. I don't want to be a burden. I'll, don't make plans just for me. We really try to be unobtrusive. And that kind of goes hand in hand with a chronic need to apologize for ourselves. I know, ladies, especially, we talk about apologizing when we don't need to apologize. How often do we say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I did this or I did that." And we don't really need to. It's, either common humanness or not even our fault oftentimes, right? So it's like just reflexive for so many of us. So those are two ways. And then the other thing that came up is that we want to like be the good girl, right? We want to be good, we want to make others happy. And for me, this really showed up in terms of I wanted to earn my worth, like not even just my inherent worth, like my worth as a person, but I wanted to earn the right to have my mother be my mother kind of thing, right? I felt this need to take action in order to show that although I wasn't quote unquote wanted, that I could make up for it. Right. So I was always like trying to make other people happy, anticipate their needs, be good, like always do my homework, never cause problems in class, never cause problems with my siblings, those kinds of things. That's not entirely true. Like I did cause problems with my siblings sometimes, but it was like this incessant sort of messaging in my mind of like, you have to be good. You have to show that, you're worth keeping kind of thing. And then the last thing that came up for me, I would be curious if this resonates with anyone else. I think when we feel shame at simply existing, it's natural for us to kind of move inward to get our connection from ourselves. And I was a thumb sucker. I sucked my thumb until I was 7 years old, even though my parents tried to get me to quit sucking my thumb. I remember them painting my nails with specific product that was supposed to be bitter. And I was just like, I don't care. I'll just suck it off and then it'll be gone. They would put salsa in my mouth. Like they would make me eat jalapenos or like a bit of a jalapeno. It was actually causing quite a bit of damage with my teeth and like it was causing problems. And so they were trying to be good parents and kind of correct that. But I was just like, nope, I'm going to do this. Right. And I think it wasn't until I was in first or second grade when I stopped sucking my thumb almost constantly throughout the day. That's probably about the time when I realized that I could get validation and praise from school. So that shame for existing was, this is my guess for myself, was kind of made up for by, being the good student at school. And so then I no longer had that need to kind of turn inward and to get connection from myself. I was getting it from school. So I'm sure that this is not an exhaustive list. These are just a few things that came up for me as I thought about like, what would that look like if you had shame for simply existing? Um, Lots more things that come to my mind, but that's a good start. So, what about shame over feeling? Connection it's not actually about the physical connection. It is about the physical connection. We need the physical connection. We need that touch, just like in the study with monkeys, or this example from the book that I mentioned, the little girl wasn't getting enough touch, right? So yes, it's about the physical connection, but it's also about the felt sense, the internal sense of connection. So it's really easy to feel like we have an internal sense of connection when someone is physically connecting with us. But we can also feel an internal sense of connection when people look us in the eye, when, when we haven't that emotional connection in place. So if we are feeling shame about our feelings, right? That is when we're really going to detach ourselves from our bodies. This is a coping mechanism. It makes complete sense that we do this, but it also causes a lot of problems, especially as we grow. As we grow and we have more capacity and ability, disconnecting from our bodies and from our feelings starts to cause more and more problems, right? The first thing that I see is that it really causes a lot of anxiety, because when we have feelings, sensations, emotions within ourselves that are scary, or for whatever reason we don't want to be with them, we're almost like splitting away from ourselves, and that can cause either anxiety or depression. I think of anxiety sometimes as like a fear of feelings, or a fear of being with those feelings for any length of time. That's one of my opinions, is that that's why we have such a high prevalence of anxiety and depression in our world today. It also causes us to buffer from our feelings, right? We've talked a little bit on this podcast about buffering, but just as a reminder, buffering is when we take an action to avoid our feelings in some way that usually ends up being overall counterproductive, right? So drinking alcohol, overeating, any kind of addiction really is a buffer. And it's because we feel a way that we don't want to feel, but we don't know how to cope with those feelings. So we go to outside resources in order to deal with those feelings, right? So this could be drugs and alcohol type of thing. It could just be, I remember my son, he had a little blankie, like the first, I think 10 years of his life. I think he was 9 or 10 when we finally decided to retire this blankie, which we still have. We will keep it forever and ever. But he would go to his crib during the middle of the day, like when he was a toddler and he could navigate himself, right? I would be like, where is he? Where is he? And I would find him in his room with his little arm reached through his crib, stroking his blankie. His blanket had these little patches. It was like a little quilt, and it had these patches of this really soft, smooth, um, it was like, yeah, the soft, smooth, like fuzzy fabric. And he would go there and he would put his arm through and he would just touch his blanket. In fact, he named his blanket. His blanket was Unga Unga. Such a weird name, but that's what happens when a toddler names something. And he would be like, Unga Unga, Unga Unga. And it would like soothe him, right? So he wasn't a thumb sucker like I was. And he didn't use like a binky or a pacifier at all. But he did have this blanket that he would take with him everywhere. And it, like, the edges are so frayed now. So something like that could even just be a buffer, right? Something that we use to resource and just to like calm ourselves or comfort ourselves, right? If our feelings are getting to be too much. Sometimes we might shove our feelings down. For example, and this happens a lot with my clients, they feel like they want to cry, but they can't. And it's okay. It doesn't mean that anything is wrong, but it just means that you're used to disconnecting from your own feelings. If you have a critical voice in your mind about your feelings, right? That voice that says, you're such a wimp, stop being a crybaby, things like that. That is something that might arise out of shame over your feelings. And then lastly, shame over connecting itself. It makes sense that if we don't get that need met of connection, that we would maybe feel shame that we want to connect or that we are connecting. So this might look like an internal push and pull at wanting connection. Like there's that part of you that really wants it, but then a part of you that's like, no, don't do it. And it could show up externally as well, where you make a plea for connection, whether this is conscious or subconscious, right? We are always making bids for connection. But then once you get met with that connection, you push it away. This is also my son from infancy, from a very young age. So I don't really blame myself for this, because it's so easy as the mom when we're thinking about attachment to be like, oh, what did I do wrong? He was literally born this way. So I work to not blame myself, but he would be hungry and want to nurse as an infant, and I would nurse him, and then he would literally push against my body, right? And he still does this in some ways today. Now he's 14. He likes being close. He wants that connection. Sometimes he'll say, "Mom, rub my head," or "Mom, scratch my back." And sometimes he allows it, but sometimes when I want a bid for connection, maybe I'll go up to him and say, hey, can I hug you? And he's like, no, no. He like really pushes it away often. So that's just an example. Another thing that I thought of, if we feel shame over connection or, wanting connection or needing connection, it might be hard for us to make eye contact, because direct eye contact with someone is a very connecting act. The body language might show you that like there's some unease. So we probably call this social awkwardness. But what if this social awkwardness, this body language of like, oh, I don't know how to be with you, and I feel uncomfortable making eye contact. Maybe I don't know how to carry a conversation back and forth. We would call that social awkwardness. But what if it's just behaviors that come out of a shame for wanting to connect, right? For me, that just feels so like, oh, so validating. And so like, oh, this makes sense, right? So those are a few examples that I came up with of what it could look like on the outside if we have shame over connection itself. So remember that it's natural and normal to feel shame over any one of these things occasionally. We're human. We have the whole range of emotions. What we're really looking for here is if you notice a chronic pattern, kind of a longer term pattern of like, I always do this, or I can never make eye contact, for example. That's our cue of like, is something off with this core need of connection, right? Did you not get the connection that you really needed? And I just want you to think of it in terms of a more holistic wellness perspective for yourself. Not that it's like, what is it about what I'm eating? What is it about this? We kind of always want to find like the thing, the magic bullet. But I have found that we really have to open ourselves up to a broader view over all the things that could be going on and interacting with each other, right? So I'm not suggesting that it's like, oh, if you didn't get the connection you needed, then this is going to happen. These are all just things that could be happening that you might notice. And sometimes a very normal, functional, embodied person will also feel these things and do these things, right? But if you listen to this podcast and you're like, yep, 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 on every single one of them, then it might be a little clue for you that there's some trauma or somatic work that might be really useful in helping you feel more fulfilled and grounded and whole in your life. So journal questions are going to be very straightforward for this episode. 1, 2, and 3. When, if at all, do you feel shame over existing? Shame around your feelings? Or shame around connection with others? You may not feel this. So that's just a cue that you maybe got that connection need met. which is fabulous. I'm so happy for you if that's the case. Okay, before I end, I wanted to just answer some frequently asked questions about my Presence group coaching program. So, as a reminder, or if you're new here, I have a group coaching program that I recently launched. I'm getting lots of positive feedback about it, but this is a program that is a somatic based coaching program. So, I have training in mindset work and some other modalities, but this program is specifically for doing somatic work, which is working with the body, with the sensations, the emotions, the urges, those kinds of things that come up. It's coaching through a lens of understanding what's happening in the nervous system. And I find that this really helps people heal and create faster results when we actually start with the body. So I have 9 frequently asked questions that I just wanted to go over. The first one is, do you have to be a coach, or can you be a coach, I suppose? And the answer is no, you do not have to be a coach. This group is for anyone who wants to learn how to regulate their nervous system and heal, or just create faster results. But you can be a coach if you want. If you want to come into this program, it's for coaches as well as anyone else. Number 2 is, do you have to be LDS or Christian to join this group? And the answer is also no. Now, you will want to know that I do coach with my own Christian values. It's a big part of who I am. If you listen to this podcast, you know that. But as long as that doesn't bother you, you can be any faith tradition or no faith tradition at all. And you can come in. If you want to learn how to regulate your nervous system, you want to learn somatic tools, this is the place for you. Number 3 is, what do you mean by somatic coaching? So soma means body. Somatic coaching uses your body as a starting point for change. I coach with a lens of knowing what is happening in your nervous system, which is, the nervous system includes your brain, but we're really focused on sort of the subconscious aspects, right, of the nervous system. I use movement, emotion, sensation, bodily impulses, as well as mindset. Sometimes mindset does come in to guide the work. I find that we can go deeper, faster by working with the wisdom of the body instead of the chatter of the mind. And instead of talking about the internal dynamics, I'm working directly with them. So that's what I mean by somatic. Number 4 is, what is the format? Presence is a 1-year small group membership. So right now you can come in at any point in time. We welcome new members anytime. And you can pay monthly, or you can pay for an entire year in full. And when you pay for an entire year in full, you get a 2-month discount compared to that monthly payment. So monthly payment is $222. And a 1 year in full is $2,222. For a limited time, when you pay for a year in full, you actually become a founding member and you receive lifetime access. So if you want to come in and try it, you can sign up for the monthly membership. You have until March 31st to decide if you want to be a founding member and have lifetime access. And so then we would just have you pay the difference between that yearly payment and the monthly. We would just subtract off the monthly payment, and then you can become a lifetime member. I think it's a steal. I think it's such a fabulous deal, especially for this work that we do. I find that fewer coaches know how to do the somatic work and really work with the body. So come on in. It's such a great deal right now. Number 5 question is, why is it called Presence? And I think this is a great question. I chose the name Presence because I believe all healing happens in the present moment. In this group, we're focused specifically on increasing our skills of being present with our own internal and external experiences in order to heal and create the relationships we want. So I named it Presence because I thought it was super elegant and kind of got to the heart of the work that we're doing. The 6th question is, I thought you were a trauma coach. Is this for people with trauma? And the answer is, I am a trauma coach. This group is for people with trauma and for people that don't think they have trauma. My opinion is that we all have some amount of trauma, but you might resonate more with describing chronic stress or overwhelm. It's really for anyone who's drawn to working with me, but they don't need one-on-one work, or for anyone who wants to learn that nervous system regulation piece. Number 7, is it weekly coaching? Yes, we meet weekly. Right now, it's Wednesdays at 1:30 p.m. Mountain Time for 1 hour. But as the group grows, the group coaching times will be added to the calendar. So as it grows, I'll probably add an hour or two to the week, and it'll be multiple times a week at different days and times to kind of meet everyone's schedules. As a member, you'll also have access to a member site where I will post replays of the calls and other audio and video resources. There are a few meditations in there, and I have plans to create little short snippets of videos highlighting somatic tools. There's also an optional Slack group that you can participate in if you would like, and you can join to get coaching in between sessions or just to create community. I think community is such an important aspect of the work we do when we're working with trauma and safety and all of that. And I'm all about high touch experiences. Number 8, can I work one-on-one with you instead? The answer to that is that I have limited private coaching availability. I do take one-on-one clients, but I'm currently fully booked with a waiting list as of February 17th, 2023. So if private spots become available, I will go to the members of my group first, and then I'll go to my waiting list of people that are not in presence. So it's advantageous for you to join presence. And I also just think that it's great for everyone. It's a little bit different dynamic than what you get in one-on-one coaching. And it's just really good to get started with the work. A great place to be as you wait to get a private coaching spot. But I totally understand if you don't want to join presence and you want to wait just for a one-on-one spot. And number 9, how do I sign up? Best question ever. Go to danitabremmer.com/presence and scroll down to the bottom, and you can choose your payment option. After you've paid, you'll receive 2 emails to join the member site, and then all the information is there about the Slack and everything else. So I can't wait to see you in presence. It's such a great place to be. Every week, I get a little nervous beforehand, and then afterward, I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is the work I am supposed to be doing in the world. That's enough for now, and so are you. The impact I'm making in the world grows best by word of mouth. Would you please share this episode with someone this week? And if you're ready to address your own trauma with my support, go to danitabremmer.com to schedule a free trauma assessment call. Until next time, go be yourself and follow the spirit.